Hey, welcome everybody to Tom and James. We're here. It's Friday. It's exciting. It's May 15th. We're going to get rolling. Hey, before we get started, I want to remind you, subscribe and share to both this station, James's station also, and also our Instagrams. James does an Instagram update every single day. I do 3 to 4 a week, and this is exciting. We have a lot of exciting things to talk about. Here's where we're going to go. We're going to be talking about what is going to happen in the near future when we get through the COVID part and all the lockdowns. Where's the economy going? Because let me tell you, it looks to me like it's going to be far, far worse than what we are experiencing right now. And that is what I don't believe people are ready for yet. Also, we're going to be talking about unmasking and the General Flynn issue that's been going on in Washington and what that means, the potential disaster in Washington that is coming, and for people that were working with Comey. We're going to be talking about that. And but now let me introduce to you James. James, great having you.
Glad to be here, bro. We're trying something a little different. I have to do this from a little bit of a different place with the phone because we're having some internet issues, but it's part of the COVID life we're living right now.
Yeah, it is. Last week we had to use just my picture when we.
That was rough. That was rough.
All these different internet things and different things are happening. But man, we live in exciting times. James, it's going to be a shorter time today. So let's get going. First of all, I have to apologize. I misspoke last week. James, I led you into believing that Governor Newsom here in California had issued some kind of statement that everybody in California is going to have to do vote by mail. The precincts were all going to be closed. You weren't going to be able to walk in. Apparently that was wrong. Somebody called me out on it and said, hey, did you know this? And I said, I didn't. So I misspoke. I was wrong on that. Please forgive me. And but apparently vote by mail registration is going to be sent out to everybody in California. From what I understand, that is a registered voter. But it wasn't what I thought it was. And I misled you on that. And so I want to make sure that we correct that. So if we're good, you good to go?
Yes, sir. Yeah. And you know what? I mean, no doubt. I mean, that I'm relieved to hear that. But no doubt we know that the governor and a lot of people that carry his same kind of philosophy are definitely encouraging voting using mail-in because of the whole ballot harvesting thing. And so it's not terribly far from the truth, but I'm really, really glad that you spoke up because it's important to us that we get things right. You know, we don't want to talk about things that aren't correct. And that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love doing stuff with you, Tommy. It's good. It's good that we're talking about these things.
Yeah. And I appreciate all the viewers we have. We have a lot of viewers, and they're keeping me abreast of all kinds of things, which is fantastic. Good communication. Hey, listen, May 14th, Thursday, was Israel's birthday. Israel is extremely important in Bible prophecy. I want to get there in a minute, all right? But first of all, in fact, Israel is most important when it comes to Bible prophecy. But I want to talk about the unmasking. James, can you define for our viewers what masking and unmasking is and why this is such a, from everything I've seen, this is unbelievable what has happened to Flynn. You and I were suspecting it 2 years ago. I remember talking about it with you.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at this, now all the facts are coming out. And from what I understand, it is absolutely alarming as far as this has reached in the former administration.
Yeah, so this is quite interesting. Basically, this relates to things that go all the way back to the Patriot Act and even before then, when we started looking at foreign intelligence. And this is based on the idea, this goes back to the idea that we as the United States of America, within our intelligence communities, we have the ability to be able to take a listen to people from other countries, okay? This isn't something that we really have to ask much permission to do in most contexts. However, there are many situations where there are foreign nationals, or it doesn't even have to be foreign nationals. It could be just somebody who has been born and raised in the United States who may make contact inadvertently with somebody from another country. Either they knowingly know that, or they do it knowingly, or oftentimes unknowingly. And the intelligence agencies are monitoring that, right? And so oftentimes what happens is they're listening to the content of what those foreign agents might be saying or doing. And in doing so, there are times where the people that are doing the investigations actually feel the need to what is called unmask the identity of the American citizen that's actually on the other side of that phone call, right? And so they go to what's called the FISA court. I believe that's Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court. And they get clearance from the judge. They have to go to the judge and say, listen, judge, we have probable cause, and it does have to meet the constitutional requirement as it relates to the Fourth Amendment and several other amendments of the Constitution, but it has to meet that requirement. And they basically have to say, we believe that there's something going on here where the American citizen that's in this conversation is complicit, and we need to unmask them in that. We need to know their identity and be able to use it for the purposes of our investigation. Just to give you an idea of how little this was used prior to the Obama administration, I want to say that there was something like 6 to 10 unmasking requests that were made throughout the tenure of the Bush administration. It was a very, very small amount, and they were huge in foreign intelligence. They were really, really big on this. This was something they were doing a lot. And so in the Obama administration, as I understand it, there have been well over 300 of these unmasking requests. So recently, we are finding out that there was a lot of abuse. Obviously, we know there was a lot of abuse, but we know that the abuse was so severe that what they were doing was they were creating dossiers that were stating that there was some type of for lack of a better term, some type of a nefarious act that took place by an American citizen, and they're using that faulty premise to be able to find justification within the FISA court to be able to access information concerning these people and thus spy on them. Now, why is that a big deal to us? It really, really, truly is an infringement upon our ability to be able to have privacy, right? We have what's called a reasonable expectation of privacy within the confines of our communications. And when somebody like a decorated military man like Flynn, who was at the top of the National Security Council, ends up getting spied on simply because he's a political opponent, that's a serious problem, right? It's actually a federal crime. And in some cases, it could be considered treasonous, which in this case, it might actually be considered treasonous simply because it was people who were left over from the previous administration carrying on the wishes of the vice president, president, whoever was at the White House, unmasking, and that's a situation. So the problem here is that it's an infringement upon our liberties, right? And where this has to do with Bible prophecy, I think probably where it becomes an issue for us isn't necessarily that, oh, this was prophesied in the Bible or anything like that. But I do think that what's happening is there is a growing movement for comfort with the sharing of information that would normally be considered to be extremely private, okay? And the more that begins to happen, the more we begin to move to these common databases, the more we begin to move to this one world government type connection, and we become more comfortable with that kind of infrastructure. Now, this is interesting to us because as Americans, right now, we're very sensitive about our liberties and where things are going as far as that's concerned. And that's why this is a problem. But that's basically the summary of the unmasking issue. And I'm being very, very preliminary about it, but that's pretty much the summary of it all.
Yeah. So what concerns me is there's many things. Wall Street Journal had issued an article on Thursday about it, and it was very, very concerning from Wall Street Journal's perspective, how bothersome this is that this actually has happened as more and more facts are coming out. But you have someone who, you mentioned a political opponent, so you're able to shape the political environment by accusing the Trump administration, Trump himself of being a Russian operative is what the narrative was. and going that direction. So that's already contaminated at least 50% of the population of America, just with that thought being planted in people's minds. And then they believe it, and then they run with it. And all the facts are coming out. It's actually, you have, it appears, collusion on the part of the former administration against half of America and who is the American president and his administration. And
Well,
now they're all proven to be, everything is based upon one lie upon another lie upon another lie, and a man is put in prison for it. And you're looking at this going, you got Comey, you have all these other people who are named at the top. And I think a lot of people say, well, listen, more and more facts are going to come out about this. But, I'm looking going, man, there's got to be some kind of penalty. How did you do?
We'll take it a step further. Let me just simply say, some of you might be listening to this and saying, well, what does that have to do with me? I'm not involved in any of this stuff. I'm not a politician. Who cares? That kind of a thing. Well, here's an example where it might apply to me and you, Tom. We have missionaries that we support. Okay. We support missionaries all over the world. Okay. We have people that we support in Peru, in Russia, in Egypt, in the Middle East. All it takes is for us to make one phone call to somebody over there. And if the right circumstance comes up with the right intelligence agency and they want to do something where they start getting into our own private lives and looking for things to build up against us, they could very, very easily do it. It's not very difficult. They can do it in the name of FISA. I mean, it's if they're going to infringe upon the privacy of one person, they'll do it upon others. And this is not a defend Trump thing. Listen, every American should be freaked out about this, in the sense that freaked out, not like the world is going to end, but we know what's going to happen with the end of the world. The Lord's already told us that. But we should all be worried about this, because let's just say for a second now, Democrats are no longer in office. And let's say this is all acceptable. We've just said, okay, let's just open the door and let this happen. Well, now the Republicans are in office and they can do the same thing. So it doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on. Why should we be amenable to allowing our freedoms to be infringed upon? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. It's alarming. Hey, I don't have a lot of time today, unfortunately. But
that's my fault. Sorry.
Hey, that's all right. This is great. I'm glad you're here. But I got to ask you this. I look at COVID-19, all the restrictions, the lockdowns, things are starting to loosen up. And I look at the economy, and I think that what's coming in the future, in the very near future, is going to be far worse than what we've experienced so far. People are going to be losing their jobs. There's a domino effect, right? So you have American Airlines was $25 billion in debt before this started. They've laid off the majority of their staff. And you look, those jobs, from what I hear, a lot of these airline jobs aren't coming back. Travel industry, rental cars, you start looking right on down that path. And all the other industries that have been hit and people that have lost their jobs, there's a domino effect. What's going to happen with the economy? And it doesn't look good, because when you go into a depression, a major recession, you have great emotional despair. You have burglaries go up. Violent crimes are going to go up.
Oh, yeah.
You have suicides. You have domestic violence, alcoholism. These things this is the reality of what we're looking at. And I know people really don't like to hear these things, but I'm looking and I'm sounding the alarm, because I think there's a great concern for these things right now. What do you think?
Yeah, and look, things are bad. Make no mistake about it. Things are not in a healthy place, and the fastest way to get the economy upstarted is by letting people get back to their jobs. Unfortunately, there are too many governments within our society, and too many governments, within these states, that are not going to be willing to allow that to happen so quickly. And then to make things worse, you have people in Washington that are saying, oh, if we inject another $4 trillion into the economy, it's going to make things better. And I think that the reason why it's important for us to be talking about these things is, if you're looking for hope in this economy, you're not going to find it, right? it's not going to be the case. Even if your job is intact and everything is good, watching the people around you suffer is not going to be a fun thing. Where we're going to find hope is we're going to find hope in Christ. And here's my statement on this. I look at how bad the economy is. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say something that maybe a lot of people would disagree with. I don't know, Tommy, maybe you might even disagree with me on this. We've been looking at the numbers, seeing how bad things are and how horrible things are going to be and how much worse things are going to get and how ugly things are becoming again and again and again and again, and how crazy things just seem to be spinning out of control. And my view on this is I think that God can save all of this. Mm-hmm. See, I personally think that if the Christians that are listening to the recording that we're making right now will take strength in knowing that God is in control and that he's around, then we can go back to the principle that we learned in First or Second Chronicles in chapter 7. You know, in that chapter, Solomon just finished dedicating the temple. And when he did, he basically said, God, when we turn our backs from you, you know, we're going to experience famine and pestilence and all of these things. But Lord, if we go to this place, this temple that you're in, we know you can't stay in this temple. I mean, obviously the universe isn't big enough for you. When we go to this place to come seek you, Lord, I want you to answer us. I want you to hear our cry. And then the Lord goes back to Solomon and he says, you know what, Solomon, after the party's over, Solomon goes to bed. God wakes him up at night and he says, Solomon, I heard your prayer. I'm gonna be in this temple. And here's the deal. He says, when my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, will pray, will turn from their wicked ways, you know what's going to end up happening? I'm going to hear them. I'm going to listen to what they say, and I'm going to heal their land. And I believe the principle is just the same, that if we as Christians will walk in humility, if we turn from the ways in which we've walked away from God, if we go back to the principles of praying and fasting and seeking God and looking to him and desiring him and wanting to walk with him more than we ever have before and put our face to the ground and give God an opportunity to do something great, I can promise you, God can do something amazing. Not the president, not the people in office, not the economic infrastructure that we're trying to fix, not the new jobs. Nothing can fix this except the Lord. And I believe that God can do it if we as Christians will turn from the ways that we have adhered to, if we will allow ourselves to come to that place of really, truly repenting and seeking God. I think he can transform the whole world. And I think where we live, we really are that purifying influence. I think he can save our nation. I really do. I really believe that he can do that. We just have to let him do it. Because right now, I think it's important. You point this out. You said it's hopeless. I agree with you. I don't think there's any other way to look at it. There is literally no hope from the perspective of this world. This economy ain't coming back. Nothing is going to get fixed unless we as believers turn our hearts toward Jesus and allow him to do something substantial. I think that's the only way this nation gets saved.
Amen. You know, I want to echo that thought that in Psalm 106, when Israel had turned against the Lord, just a couple of verses, it says this: thus Israel provoked the Lord to anger with their deeds, and the plague broke out among Israel. And then Phinehas stood up, intervened, and the plague was stopped. And that was accounted to him for righteousness to all generations forevermore. And it's going to take men to step up to the plate, put on your big boy boots and say, we are turning to the Lord. It's going to take pastors and leaders to step up and do that. No, we're going to turn to the Lord no matter what. Here's something else that's rather interesting. The Bible tells us, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. In the days of Noah, they were eating and drinking, they were buying, they were selling, there was business going on. So it could very well be that that's what's going to happen. That I know for me, I can't wait. I feel like I need a vacation now more than ever. I'm willing to spend whatever it takes to go and just get away with my family or whatever. I imagine a lot of people are feeling that way. So maybe the money will be spent, economy will come back. Here's what's troubling. There's a real plagues that are coming in the tribulation that are going to be absolutely devastating.
That's right.
To the world. And I kind of wonder if people are going to let their guard down when the real plagues come along. I'm not saying people haven't died or been affected by this COVID plague, but what's coming is far, far worse. So I can imagine the economy coming back. in a way that only God could do, because all of man's answers right now ain't going to happen. But
That's
God
right.
could do it. People let their guard down. Rapture happens. Tribulation. That's all speculation. But still, we know how things will play out in the future based upon what the Bible tells us about the 70th week of Daniel.
You're right. And that's the difference between God's judgment and what currently is just simply rain falling on the just and the unjust, right? This is just the simple effects of sin in an ungodly world. But when we get to the point where God judges the world, stand by. It's going to be nothing like what we're seeing right now. This is lightweight compared to what we're seeing right now. I completely agree with you, Tom.
The days are coming when people will look back and say, I wish it was the COVID-19 generation. That might sound mean-spirited, but really, this is going to seem so nice compared to what the Bible prophesies about what is coming. That ought to frighten everybody. However, one last thing I got to ask you, I know I need to get going, but I got to ask you about Israel. And I want to remind everybody out there, make sure you subscribe to this channel, Hope for Our Times, and also my Instagram, Tom Hughes. James, your channel?
My channel is James Cadiz at Instagram. You can follow me at James Cadiz, and then our Calvary Chapel, Signal Hill. That is our YouTube channel. You can go there. And then Tom and I have a YouTube channel that we're actually beginning to upload material on, and that's Real Hope with Tom and James. That's another channel that you can go to that we have made available to you. And we ask that you subscribe to all of them. We want to give you as much material as we possibly can. And you may or may not know this, but Tom and I are working very, very hard to give you lots of great material. We're having a few technical hiccups, but I think those are more rare than they are common. And we just love bringing that your way.
And we'll get through this. Last thing, Israel. So May 14th, Thursday was Israel's birthday. We think May 14th, 1948 to where we are in 2020. James, why is Israel significant to Bible prophecy, and why do the Jews why did they have to be back in the land in order for all of the prophetic events to be fulfilled? We could talk for hours, but how could you sum that up in 3 minutes?
Okay, so quick summary in 3 minutes. This is why Israel is so significant. This is why the reestablishment of the nation of Israel is so significant. Because prior to 1948, there was no nation of Israel. That's something that we have to point out. This is a critical fact that a lot of people don't actually consider. Prior to 1948, there was no nation of Israel. And actually, prior to 1948, matter of fact, as late as, I would say 1945, 1946, during the World War, people thought, no way, Israel will never be reestablished as a nation. That'll never be the case. As a matter of fact, that land was something that nobody really cared about. It was called the true swamp of the world. Nobody really cared about Israel. But the interesting thing is when you read all the end times prophecy, makes it very, very clear. It states it right away. It says it, and make no mistake about it, that the nation of Israel would one day be restored by God. He would, really replenish the land, that it would become fruitful, that it would become a land really of riches and wealth. We read in Ezekiel chapter 38 of a war that would happen with a nation that hadn't been established even at that time. Now that nation is established. When we talk about the rise and the fall of the Antichrist, the whole epicenter of everything in the last days centers around Jerusalem, typically the Temple Mount. And that's the thing that is like crazy when you really consider it. I mean, you think of how significant all of that is. And so, through and through, from every way, every aspect, Israel is the center of it all. The Antichrist can't set himself up in the middle of that 7-year period and demand to be worshiped if there was no temple to be set up in. So these are the types of things that we just have to look at and consider and understand. This is like, wow. So Israel being reestablished, oh my goodness, that's such a huge part of things. And anybody who can't see that, something's wrong. You're not paying attention to what the word has to say.
Amen. In fact, this is what I want to do, because I know we're out of time. But next time, James, I'm going to ask you about Israel. I want to ask you about details today. I heard that just today that on June 1st, the schools are going to start opening in Israel again. But I want to talk to you about the future of Israel, because it appears to me that Israel becomes this beacon to the world, business-wise and moving forward-wise. Their economy will be booming in the coming days. You've talked about Russia is going to become friendly and friendlier with Israel. I've heard that the temple, there's a lot of people that want to build the temple in Israel. You have information on that? and protests and different things. I want to ask you about that because we talk a lot about COVID and other things. I want to ask you about that. I think people want to hear it. So you good?
There's growing international support for the building of the temple, believe it or not.
I want to talk about that. International support for the building of the temple and the call for Jews to leave America. It's happening right now and get back to Israel because of concern of the civil war in America. So the focus is going to be on Israel. So that's what we're going to spend our time on next time. Amen?
Amen.
Okay. Thank you, James, for being with us today. Again, subscribe to both of our channels. Follow us on Instagram. James has an update every day. I have 3 to 4 per week. Listen, we look forward to next time with you. Until then, keep your eyes fixed on the heavens and the Lord who is above. Remember this, vertical focus will keep you from horizontal panic. God bless.
That's right.
See you next time.